Apple Pies and Other Amends by ToEatAPeach, read by Bella. Chapter 13. Apparently Maeve has permission to apparate wherever she wishes, regardless of the ministry set wards. That's the only way Hermione can explain why she and the elf arrive inside the manor, at the base of the grand staircase. Side-along apparitions haven't been Hermione's forte since the war, and so she stumbles slightly up on their landing. It's not Maeve's hand, however, that grasps her elbow. "You're right, Granger." Hermione allows Draco to steady her, keeping her gaze trained on the marble floor in an attempt to collect herself. When she finally peeks up at him, he's wearing a small smile that she finds rather bewildering. Were his lips always so full? And his eyes? When did his eyes start doing that weird fluttery thing to her heart? "Are you alright?" he repeats. She nods numbly. "Yeah, sorry. Side-alongs just aren't my thing anymore." "Hermione Granger not the best at something?" Draco smirks, but there's no malice in it. "Alert the ministry at once. Inquiries will need to be made." "Ha ha, Malfoy." She straightens her spine and gives him an appraising once-over. The infamous black suit is back, this time with a white Oxford shirt and a black tie. There's a sharp edge to his jaw tonight, which he now recognizes as nerves instead of cruelty. He smells delightfully clean scrubbed, like citrus and spice, and he's combed his hair neatly again. Although it's not loose like he wears it on Saturday mornings, she finds that she rather likes his hair this way too. Even in this buttoned-up state, so similar to their school days, she thinks he's... Oh, Merlin, I'm in trouble. Hermione takes his elbow when he offers it and joins him in climbing the never-ending staircase. They are silent for 8-9 steps until he inclines his head towards her. "So, Granger, how ready are you for food poisoning?" "I've been dry heaving all day in preparation." "Damn it, it's just like you and ours all over again, isn't it?" "There was much less vomiting with the exams, I think." His laugh causes them to pause briefly at the first-floor landing. To their left, she sees an enormous dining room, dominated by black teak paneling and a long obsidian table. Hermione moves towards it, but Draco pulls her back. "Not that dining room?" she asks, and feels his responding shudder against her arm. "No, not that dining room. Never that dining room." "Why not?" "Because that's where he held his meetings." Hermione shudders too. "You know, sometimes I forget that he lived here during the war." She feels Draco force a shrug against her shoulder. "I forget sometimes too. And then I pass by a certain room, or smell something burning, or hear a loud voice, and then I... Hermione clutches him tighter to her side as they climb. "And then you remember," she finishes, but kindly, softly, with just the tiniest clutch of her fingers into the fabrics of his coat. "Sometimes," he says, "I wish I could open up my skull and just scrape out every image I have of him." "I'd offer you a memory charm, but we both know I'm a little too good at those." Draco snorts. "You'd have to remove the memories of my own home too. There's nothing like having a mad bastard as a house guest to really change the way you view real estate." "Too true," she nods sadly, and then attempts a joke. "Charming 9-bed, 12-bath mansion for sale in Wiltshire. 2 formal dinings, 2 libraries, a chef's kitchen, and a peacock sanctuary. Torture chamber optional. Only 3 bloodstains in the main parlour. A real steal at this price." "Dungeons recently remodeled into a home gym," he adds, and head whips around towards him. "Is that true?" "Why? Are you up for a quick job right now?" "No, but the idea of Narcissa Malfoy doing calisthenics is almost too much to handle." "Well, my mother is technically a kept woman, isn't she?" Hermione's still laughing when Draco pulls them to a stop on the 2nd floor, just at the entrance to a long and very lovely room. Like the dark space 1 floor below, this room is filled by a seemingly endless table. But this dining room is far more welcoming, decorated in warm, cherry wood, and lit by a roaring fireplace. Colorful paintings line the walls, the figures in each one moving magically beneath the glittering chandeliers. At the far end of the room, 2 place settings wait for them. Hermione emits a small, contented sigh and turns towards Draco to express gratitude for such a scene. The "thank you" seizes in her throat, however, when she sees his face. Almost unconsciously, he's studying her in the firelight. His gaze pauses at the curl of her hair, the plunge of her dress, the color of her lips. He catches her catching him, and the pale skin along his cheekbones reddens fiercely. She sees his throat bob once-twice as he swallows. All of a sudden she's blushing too, and she wants to say something to cover for him, But to her horror, to her delight, he speaks first. "You look nice tonight." She runs one hand over the place where the dress catches her hip bone and blushes harder at the way his eyes follow the movement. Thanks, she stutters. "If I had a choice, I would have worn trainers and a hoodie. This was all Ginny Weasley and Mavie." Moving them closer to their seats, Draco coughs lightly around his embarrassment. "Remind me to give Mavie a pay raise, then." "Will do, as long as you help me draft a letter to Kingsley begging for a raise for myself." He laughs as he pulls out one of the chairs for her. "What gives you the impression that Shacklebot would listen to anything I had to say?" Hermione sits and places a white linen napkin in her lap. She waits for Draco to take the neighboring seat before replying with a mock sweetness. "Oh, we wouldn't sign your name to the letter. That's political suicide." "Ha ha, Granger." She inclines her head towards him as he removes his own napkin. "That is, unless the Malfoy family intends to donate a sizable sum to the Giants' Rights Law Library I plan to establish soon." "I didn't think the Ministry could house a library that large." "Get it? Large. Large as in giant?" Hermione groans and intentionally lets her leg bump his under the table. As a kick. Not just to touch him, obviously. But when she moves her leg back, Draco chases it, and the edge of his shoe settles ever so slightly against her elfishly enhanced palms. He pulls one from the pocket inside his coat and casts a quick aguamenti. Immediately, one set of their glasses fills with water. After a second nonverbal wave over the table, his wine glass remains empty, but an opened wine bottle appears next to hers. She glances fleetingly at its label, glances again, and then directs a sputtering noise at Draco. "What is that?" she asked, stabbing one finger at the bottle beside her. "What do you think it is?" Draco asks the question like he might inquiry about the weather. All nonchalance and casual wand work, as the bottle magically pours Hermione her first ruby-red glass of wine. "That," she looks an awful lot like a bottle of 1947 Chateau Cheval Blanc. One of the best wines in the world, maybe in the universe. So I assume that it's not actually what it looks like, sitting next to my glass. Filling your glass, technically. Draco shrugs and takes a long, slow drink of his water. "And what if it is what it looks like?" "That is too extravagant, Malfoy," she grits out. "Far too extravagant. I can't possibly accept." He smiles lightly into his glass. "I bet I can give you 5 reasons to accept." "You can give me one valid reason," she says, crossing her arms indignantly over her chest. "All right," he draws. He holds up his right hand with all 5 fingers sprawled away from each other. For each reason, he lowers one finger until he finishes with a loosely closed fist. 5. We have a case of this in our wine cellar, so the Malfoys have 11 more opportunities to flaunt our wealth and extravagance after this one bottle has been drained. 4. If this bottle sits in the cellar for even one more night, it will be a damned shame. I'm not sure if you've noticed, Granger, but the Malfoys family isn't particularly well-liked or well-visited these days. We won't be hosting any meetings anytime soon, which is for the best, I'm sure you agree, nor do I think we're even allowed to throw our annual pureblood Christmas party. So, if you don't drink this wine, it will eventually turn to vinegar. Splendid vinegar, I'm sure, but vinegar nonetheless. 3. This wine was undoubtedly purchased to impress the Dark Lord, and I can't think of a better way to chap his scaly ass in the afterworld than watch his most favorite muggleborn down an entire bottle tonight. 2. I'm an alcoholic, or pretty close to one. Any booze you remove from my home, and thus from my path of temptation, is probably a good thing. Finally, reason number 1. Theo tells me you like red wine, particularly a good Bordeaux. And so all I really want, the real reason I decanted this bottle, is to watch your lips when you taste the best red wine there is, and possibly ever was." Hermione's indignation starts to flee by reason number 3, and vanishes by reason number 2. Reason number 1, however, sends her heart rate into overdrive, and she takes a concessionary drink of wine to cover her discomfort. Then she takes a second, and a third, and a fourth, until Draco's laughter stops the glass on its return path to her mouth. "It never gets old," he says. Hermione scowls, even though the heat of the expression probably gets a bit lost with her 5th sip of the wine. "What never gets old?" "Being right all the time." "True," she says, swallowing a gob of pure perfection. "I've plenty of experience with that, but how would you know?" Draco of old would have taken the bait and delivered the cruelest, most direct hit in response. This Draco, the Draco with whom she's bloodled, whose foot now presses against hers below the mahogany, just grins in triumph and waves his wand over the tabletop. A colourful salad appears for the first course. Hermione sees shaved fennel, shallots, chopped walnuts, and some figs, amongst other ingredients. She takes an experimental bite and then makes a small, happy noise of approval. Lovely, Draco, really lovely. You did this all by yourself. Perhaps it's the wine, or the beautiful setting, or the way he watches her when he thinks she isn't looking. But his first name slips out of her mouth without warning. She doesn't seem to notice or particularly care. I composed the salad, he says, and made the vinaigrette, but Mavie had a pretty heavy hand in everything except dessert. I mean, I cooked, but she was kind of my director today while we prepped everything. Honestly, I didn't really try to stop her. I don't actually want to give us food poisoning, you know. Hermione smiles. Given that Mavie was the mastermind behind my hair tonight, I don't think I have any room to judge. Draco's gaze roves over her curls and the glittering hairpins holding them back. Yes, well, he says around some gravel in his voice. She's not exactly subtle, is she? Hermione just shakes her head and then gestures for Draco to proceed with the second course. The meal goes on in this fashion, from one delicious course to the next. The entire time they eat, Hermione continues to sip that Cheval Blanc with something akin to worship. Almost as if he can't help himself, Draco watches her closely as she drinks. At first she worries that he's coveting the alcohol, the heady buzz that follows each gulp of the world's most perfect Bordeaux. But soon Hermione realizes that it isn't the wine he craves. He's watching her lips, just as he promised, the way they purse with every sip, the way they fold against each other after a particularly long drink, the way her tongue flicks against them to capture a stray red droplet. Draco Malfoy can't seem to look away from her mouth, can't seem to pretend that he's doing anything else. At one point his thoughts must break free because he bursts out mid-course. Thank you! For being here tonight, I mean. Hermione sets down her glass and frowns. Where else would I be? He rolls his eyes, even though he's obviously ill at ease with what he said to her. Anywhere, Granger. The Leaky Cauldron, Potter's house, hell, even not Manor. Anywhere but here. Hermione's frown deepens. Draco, I'm not sure if it's me or the wine that's confessing this, but I think I've come to... Well, I kind of like it here now, despite, everything. He nods, clearly relieved, but also clearly still upset about something. What is it, Draco? She presses. What's bothering you? He regards her warily before admitting, The company, it's nice. Your company, I mean. Hermione tilts her head to one side and considers him. She should try to force him to elaborate on this, and part of her wants to find out why her company is nice in particular. Instead, she takes another route. What? You Slytherins don't have get-togethers? Because I have to tell you, we Gryffindors throw a brilliant game night once a month. The corner of her mouth dimples. You could join us sometime, really show Harry up in cards. All the competition and stick-to-itiveness and bravado in one room. Thanks, but no. She laughs despite herself. You joke, but that's eerily accurate. Although I'm sure Slytherin party would be damned near Roman, what with all the political intrigue and backstabbing. Actually, our school parties were mostly just about punch-spiking and shagging in the broom cupboards. He grins at her obvious embarrassment. And we do get together every now and then, but we drink a lot nowadays, more than we should, all of us, not just me. Plus, our talks can be troubling. Troubling in what way? He sighs and traces the rim of his empty wine glass with one index finger. We talk about the war, sometimes, but there isn't as much remorse as there should be. And on very rare occasions, the conversation gets a bit too, let's just say nostalgic, for my tastes. From people outside my closest circle, there's the occasional could have been. Like, we don't bloody well know what life would have been like if he'd won. Like, we wouldn't all be dead right now, too. She wrinkles her nose. Merlin, that's ill. Indeed. Draco steals his hand and fixes his attention completely on her. So it's just different with you, I think. When you and I talk about the war, you seem to... You really... What I mean is, when it comes to the stupidity and regret and resignation and hope, you really just seem to... Get it, she finishes. I just get it. He nods with a lightness that resembles relief. She recognizes it because she feels that way too. She's already come to the illogical, weird, but nonetheless spot-on conclusion that, more often than not, Draco Malfoy gets it. Gets her. Draco, however, is now staring at his empty glass with a deep, wrinkling frown, as if the glass itself holds the meaning of life, and that meaning isn't pretty. Granger, he says, there is still one thing that I don't understand. Sensing that something big is coming, Hermione sets aside her wineglass, pushes away her near-empty plate of quail and roasted potatoes. And what exactly is that? I know why I want you here. His eyes meet hers, and the fire in all the grey just kills her. But why are you here? How can you even stand to be near me? Is it because of your project? Is it because you want to complete it? Or is it pity? Draco practically spits the last word out, and his mouth curls into something unpleasant, something very similar to his old sneer. It's a cruel look, one designed to intimidate and, long ago, to bully. But tonight, Draco's eyes give him away. There's something truer than cruelty in them, a blend of worry, anticipation, and some other emotions she's not quite sure she's ready to name yet. For a long while, Hermione can't answer him, partly because she's stunned by his sudden vulnerability, by the fact she actually knows him well enough to recognize that vulnerability. But she's also unsure of what to say, unsure of how to put it so that he understands what she needs from their friendship, unsure of how to treat him better than a former Death Eater, but also better than some psychologically damaged soap bubble. Because while he might be both of those things, he isn't just those things. Not to her, not anymore. Should I give you 5 reasons? She finally asks, with a wry twist of her lip. When he doesn't respond, she holds up her fingers like he did and begins to count downward. 5. It was a bad tattoo at first, I'll admit that. For the sake of disclosure, I should also tell you I call it the PTSD pastry tool. Ron hates the name, but I love it. Initially, one of the reasons I agreed to your request was because, yes, I did want to finish the tour. 4. You, Draco, have PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. And you're right, I do pity you for it. But guess what? Everyone I've visited has it. Everyone. The Weasleys, Kingsley, Theo, even Pansy. Here's another tidbit for you. I have it too. Bad. I hear your aunt cackling in my dreams. If my eye starts twitching when I'm tired, I'm worried that it's an after effect of the crucio. And I still can't go into your front parlor. So I pity myself more than I do you, trust me. 3. And this is a big one. Lots of people are willing to talk about the war, but you're actually the only one who seems to be willing to talk about the bad stuff too. The really bad stuff like Voldemort or the Cruciatus curse, or the way people act like we should be over it by now. Harry will touch on it with me, but only a little. Ron and I actually broke up because he didn't want to talk about it. But I do, and apparently you do too. Which is a massive relief. 2. I don't want you to drink yourself to death because I can't imagine a world without you in it. And 1. I like talking to you, and baking with you, and drinking tea with you, and doing magic with you, and arguing with you. So I guess it's safe to say that I like you, Draco Malfoy. I like your company too. It's no coincidence that the last finger she lowers is the one he healed. The one that still bears the faint scar of his spell. It's no coincidence that the last finger she lowers is the one he healed. The one that still bears the faint scar of his spell. His gaze lingers on it as she tucks it back into her fist and, perhaps unknowingly, his eyes flit to her lips again. Slowly, ever so slowly, Draco smiles. Fancy some dessert, Granger? Thank you for listening to today's chapter of Apple Pies and Other Amends by ToEatAPeach, read by Ella Bella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Tumblr, AO3, or Instagram. Thank you to ToEatAPeach for letting me use their story, and thank you to all of you for listening.